Hi everyone. So this is a video on fantasy and nature. I've, as you see, been in the forest for a few days, and I got inspired being in the forest. Thinking about fantasy, and since nature is very, very common in the fantasy setting. Um, and I was in the west of Sweden. It's called Skaraborg, and it's a very beautiful place, very beautiful nature, which I will show you, and maybe you think that too. I don't know. And there are many historical places, religious places in the west of Skaraborg. And obviously, fantasy includes a lot of nature, a lot of spirituality. So I thought this was a great topic. I will give you approximately 8 examples, and we often talk about which author has inspired who in fantasy, but we seldom speak about which nature has inspired the author. Maybe for you it's obvious. I think it's so important in fantasy that we have to talk about that. And One thing that is really important is the fauna and the vegetation. Here is a photo from details in the forest, magic forest, I call this photo. I don't know if it is conveyed through the picture, but it was a very beautiful evening, and the light shone through the tree, between the tree roots, as you see there. Um, and Fantasy authors usually populate their world with different geographical settings, different nature, and also different plants and animals. I have a map here to show you. This is from Night of Knives, Ian Cecil Mount Malazan. This is the Malaz Isle. You see mountains, you see rivers, you see forests, you see lakes, etc. And of course, on various places, various different races live, and maybe the places also have a spiritual power, for example. That's common in Malazan Book of the Fallen, Lord of the Rings. We have Narnia, every fantasy book. Maybe you have your own examples. Which is your best book when it comes to nature and fantasy? I would like to hear that. Also, in nature, the natural setting, or the nature setting, I would say, is connected to different races or tribes or groups or people, whatever you call them. I have a few examples here, and it's the druids, for example. I'm playing a druid in Baldur's Gate 3 at the moment. We have magicians, we have wizards. They all draw power from the nature, and we also have mortals and immortals, of course, that relate to nature, that might respect nature or disrespect nature as well, because sometimes there is this environmental perspective of reading fantasy. People are destroying nature and people who save nature. An obvious example of that is here the Treebeard paint, which I painted a few years ago. Yeah, the ends in Lord of the Rings, they try to save nature, and then you have Sauron and Saruman and all of these, people who are trying to destroy nature for the, kind of industrial thing against versus nature. So nature has this, ecological green feeling, quite nice if you ask me, important values to promote. Also, the places, as I said, are important. And that is the Old Forest, for example, in Lord of the Rings, and you have Rivendell, and you have many, many places in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, usually tied to nature and archaeology. Then you also have those places in Narnia, not least, and there you have snow, very important, and the Witch, Lion, and the Wardrobe, I think is called in English. Um, a race very tied to nature are the elves, and I have a Silmarillion book here beside me, and beautiful copy bought many years ago. And I will show you some paintings in here. So nature, really, do you see that? Yes, you do. Now, nature is important, and I think setting of nature makes the reader think that this is maybe holy, it's serene, it's beautiful, it's spiritual, etc. I think this is when the humans, I think it might be the elves, when they woke up on Middle Earth. Maybe you know this better than me. I was really into Lord of the Rings when I was maybe 10 to 30, so for 20 years, and then I went to read other books. So I've forgotten a few things about Lord of the Rings. I have one more picture here. Yes, this one about Meglin, it says in Swedish, but it's also nature. Humans or races in nature, other races in nature. And especially, I think the elves, they evoke this feeling of legend. Something has been there before. The adventure, it deepens the history, it deepens the myth, I would say. It's common in mythology as well, but as you know, mythology, fantasy is very, very connected. So no surprise there, especially if you follow this channel. Also, mountains can play a big part of, all things in nature: forests, mountains, lakes, rivers, etc., etc. And even in Japanese folklore, for example, or mythology, things are loaded or charged with souls. It's called besjälad in Swedish. I'm not sure about the English word. If you are Swedish, maybe you can help me. And it means that the tree has a soul, for example. If we go out in the forest and you don't believe in magical things, so to speak, maybe you just see a tree. But if you have this idea that there are energies, which many faiths and religions promote even today, you might feel this energy field. And that's one thing that is interesting. I think that fantasy, of course, it's fantastical stories, and Lord of the Rings story has not happened for real, not the Malazan Book of the Fallen either. But they draw inspiration from real, you could say, mythological events that people on Earth believe in, and also from places that actually exist. There exists a lot of places on Earth filled with spiritual energy. According to those who believe. We have temple sites, we have ritual sites, we have the Vatican, for example. We have a lot of places in India which are charged with spiritual power, if you believe that. At least for those, it's used as well in fantasy, this kind of energy field. And energy fields are important, and in Sweden, many of the churches have been built where there earlier were Norse mythology, it's called in English, asatro in Swedish. The polytheistic faith that existed before Christianity, with Odin, Thor, Loki, for example, where there were temples. For that faith, Christians built churches because of recognition, of course, so the population would go there and still feel the spiritual energy, but also that it was believed that those places have spiritual energy. Here is a stair down to the place where a Swedish king was baptized. It was the first king who became Christianized or became Christian. Very beautiful place, very beautiful nature, a lot of beautiful sounds, and you could really feel the power here. So holy water, holy springs, wells, etc. also exist in fantasy. And you also have these beautiful places where gods appear or spirits appear in fantasy, as well as in mythology. And with that said, this ties well into folklore and folk tales. They play a huge role in all mythologies and even religions today. I mean, today in some religions you call this pagan. I don't know if that's a positive word. For me, it's a negative word. Um, but spirits, angels, etc., they exist in all kind of faiths in different ways. And in Norse mythology, we have a lot of goblins, for example. Nymphs exists in Norse mythology as well as Greek mythology, and they are usually tied to the nature, and you find them in books as well. I suppose Tom Bombadil is a kind of a nymph, and his wife are tied to almost nymph-like creatures, I would say. And they have lived there for ages, right? Like Tom Bombadil, he's lived there earlier than anyone. He knows a lot of things. So that is a few examples I have. As you see, this is the first time I'm using pictures in the video. Please tell me if you like that. Here is the old church close to the place where the Swedish king Olof Konung was baptized. Also not only nature itself, but the buildings on in this beautiful natural environment are important, not only in real life, but in our world, but also in fantasy. So that was a few examples on fantasy and nature in fantasy. You might have more examples. Please tell me about them. Give me your favorite books when it comes to fantasy and nature. I would love to hear them. I think that a fantasy book without, a good nature setting, that's not appealing to me. For me, nature has to be there. And I also think, as I said in the beginning, I think nature inspires me to both read and write fantasy. I wrote some haiku when I was in the west of Sweden here and walking around in the forest. I think nature has a lot of connection to meditation and to mindfulness, etc., whatever you to call it, yoga. I usually find people in the fantasy books that are connected to these kind of spiritual powers and also meditate and maybe drink tea as you and maybe I do. Sometimes I drink a lot of tea, and yeah, so that's all. Hope you liked it, and see you later. I will release a few more videos this weekend. I will continue to make videos like this. I will dive into my journeys in India. I hope that will be interesting for you because I visited a lot of temples, and I hope that could be really interesting when it comes to fantasy as well, especially with all the many gods and etc. that I've photographed over there. So until next time, take care. Thanks for watching and see you later.